Hello and welcome to this episode of Inspiring Entrepreneurs. I'm Katie McNair, Marketing and Communications Manager here at Strathclyde Inspire. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Will Drury, CEO of the Power and Networks Demonstration Centre at the University of Strathclyde. Will has built an incredible career at the intersection of industry, academia and government, leading multi-million pound programmes at Innovate UK, accelerating industrial transformation and sustainability, and advancing net zero energy transport and heat solutions. In this episode, we'll explore Will's career journey, discuss his thoughts on how to turn research into real-world impact, and discover how we can use collaboration and communication to accelerate innovation in the energy and tech sectors. So thank you for joining us today, Will.
That's great. Really, really good to be here and supporting what is a really important part of this entrepreneurial university. So thank you so much for having me.
We're delighted to have you. We'll just jump right in with our first question, which is, so you've had a fascinating journey. You blend engineering, innovation leadership and entrepreneurship. Can you walk us through your path so far?
Yeah, so it has been fascinating, and I've worked across, as our principal Sir Jim would say, the triple helix of industry, academia and government places. So I started going all the way back to my degree when I, at that point, did have some hair. I was at Bristol University. I did my undergraduate and stayed on to do a postgraduate PhD in electric machines, power electronics. And that was industrially sponsored at that stage. So I'd got that engagement with industry right from the outset. I left Bristol. My supervisors there realised I wasn't destined for a purely academic career. So I left and went and joined an organisation as the third employee. So it was the two founders, and I was the first person they'd brought in as an engineer to work with them, working on power controllers for small wind turbines. So went in there, and there I learned a huge amount of business. So we set up systems that allowed us to look at everything from the finance, design, all the way through to stock control, building, how do we procure, and I was involved in all of that. So from that micro industry that I took the big step from a PhD rather than going into a well-established organisation, but learned all of those different elements of what is a business. And then after 2.5 years, large consulting organisation, Ricardo, which does energy, environment and technical consulting, started doing more work in power electronics, machines, drives, because I saw that as an opportunity to learn the other side of the coin. How do larger organisations that have got a global footprint, working with some of the biggest players in the world, work, operate? And I was there for 8 years, rising from being a senior engineer through to their global technical expert. So I grew my technical competence there, my understanding of not just how the world works, but how do we deliver more value as a large organisation for both big players, but also up-and-coming technology developers. From there, the opportunity came to join Innovate UK. So back in 2019, one of the Industrial Strategy Challenge funds that were launched under Theresa May's Prime Ministership was around power electronics, machines, drives, and there was an £80 million of private sector investment at that stage. And we were targeted with public sector, and targeted with getting 153 million of other investment to go around that, to bring to nearly £250 million of investment. That challenge has concluded since I left and I'm here, but they have got an anticipated of 16 to 1. So over £1 billion of investment from that. But that opportunity gave me a chance to support others, show how the public sector and the private sector should be working together, using public sector funding to catalyse further innovation, support entrepreneurs, but also support the ecosystem that develops. So I took that on. I also became Executive Director for Digital and Tech at Innovate, so sat on their senior leadership team, and there we were looking at AI, quantum, financial services, all the way through semiconductors into the creative industries as well. So how is AR and VR technologies linked with the creative side that people often associate with arts and humanities, but actually the amount of technologies there. And then here I am. The opportunity to join Strathclyde came to take on and lead our Power Network Demonstration Centre, PNDC. So PNDC is then all about bringing together the great academic work from world-class researchers who were the right people to stay in university with industry need. And how do we put those together, but then demonstrate them? How do we allow that innovation to happen? And I think what's also unique about PNDC and its role in all of this is that it's working on the operational challenges.
Right.
Not just new, great idea that solves somebody's problem, and how do we support them adopting that? But I wasn't expecting that to happen in an operational environment. And for me, that excitement of bringing all of that together was a major driver to coming here and picking up a role at Strathclyde and growing my sort of academic part of my helix to really understand how we can continue to support that.
It sounds to me like you are a curious individual in terms of you've just been willing to go out there and try your hand at such a breadth and depth of activity that has brought together this expertise that now means you can lead something like the PNDC that's offering really important a really important kind of testing ground for things happening. So you build connections and you build collaborations and working opportunities between government, academia and industry, as you said. So how important would you see having an entrepreneurial approach is to that? And how do you define entrepreneurship? Because we find that people define entrepreneurship very differently and depending on who they are and what they've done.
Absolutely. And I think the job straight out of university is the closest I have been to that entrepreneurial, standing on my own 2 feet, setting up a business. So it's not something that I've gone out and gone, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set up as a one person and grown that. But I think a lot of what I've done is around growing things. It's about taking a risk. So I think it's really important when we look at entrepreneurship that you're trying to solve a problem. You're trying to solve what's a problem that's out there. People may not know the problem's there, but if you've got to have got that identified problem and standing up, not knowing the answer, not knowing how am I going to do this? I've had former colleagues and leaders that I've worked for that have said, I've asked you to do things and you've looked at me and the look I know means I don't know how I'm going to do this, but you've said yes. And I think that is really important, that you then go and look at how can I do this? Entrepreneurship isn't just setting up a business. It's about how you do things, how you deliver things. And the really important aspect is then bringing together that technology, that innovation, and delivering something to the market that people want.
Right.
And getting it to the market is one of the big challenges. How do we get the adoption? And I think there, for me, it's really important that you speak the language of the people you want to work with. If you've got to talk and understand their problems, put yourself in their shoes. And once you're in their shoes, understand how what you're doing for them really does make a difference. And that bit of entrepreneurship is really important to me, that we do it, we deliver it, but we communicate it.
Absolutely. That's a really lovely explanation, I think, of entrepreneurship, of that being willing to say yes to a problem, to not necessarily know what the answer is, but to have the confidence that you can lean into the uncertainty and find a path. I think that's a really good way of thinking about it and very useful for people at any stage of the journey, because problems will always arrive no matter where you are in what you're doing, I think, and being willing to approach them without worry.
I would say it's not approaching without worry. I think if you approach without worry, you know the answer.
Okay.
I think you also need to be comfortable to approach with a bit of, got no idea how I'm going to do this. But also then it comes back to what I've talked about before, and you've touched on around this collaboration, this connection. I might not know how to do this, but do I know somebody who does know how to do this, or can point me in the right direction to help me do this? And I think as an entrepreneur as well, you've got to be comfortable going to your network and your network's network and going, I need a hand. I don't understand this. Who do you, and it might not be them, but they may know somebody, and you being willing to take help and accept help and say, I need help. This is the bit I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Who can help me? And I think that being a bit uncertain, being a bit worried is probably the wrong phrase, because I don't think you should ever be in an environment where you're in yourself feeling anxious and all that and what have you, but not knowing the answer and being thoughtful about that and not being comfortable, being in that outside your comfort zone
For sure.
is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Well, it's where progress is made.
Absolutely.
I tell that to my children quite a lot when they're unsure about how to proceed with homework or they don't understand. And I say, well, that's brilliant, because you're now in the area where learning happens. If you already are finding it easy, that bit's done.
Yeah.
But you're meant to be in the area, and we all want to be in the area at least some of the day where it's new and we're not necessarily fully okay with it yet. That's where the learning happens, and that's where the progress happens.
And if it was easy, surely somebody else has done it.
For sure.
So then you're looking at what different, and you sort of within when you start working on anything, you sort of, whether it's an established business in a new area, whether it's a new project, whether it's a whole new enterprise, you've got to look at what differentiates me. And if it's a sole trader and you go, I'm going to be a consultant, sole consultant, what differentiates what you have from other people? And that comes back to the communication, because that links into, so therefore I'm going to be saying to the organisations I'm talking to, the individuals I'm talking to, this is me, and this is why I'm here to fix your problems.
Absolutely. So talking about translating a skill you have or something that exists into a commercially viable opportunity, then what would you see as the key ingredients for successfully translating complex R&D into scalable, commercially viable opportunities?
So I think it comes back to communication. I think everything I talk about is really underpinned by how well you can articulate what you have, communicate that. If to take it into the commercially viable project, it must have a need. You must have a need for the product or service that you're developing. You may see it and others may not, but you've got to really understand that. You must be absolutely fixed on what that is and how you're delivering it. Because as soon as you start to talk to 100 people and they all have very small nuanced differences of the core thing, and you try and build all of that in, you've then lost the focus and you end up designing something for everyone that is 3, 4, 5 times more complex, more expensive, more difficult to use. Yet everyone would have been happy with the core thing, and either future features you can upsell or other things. I think the other bit's a collaboration. It comes back to you don't know all the answers. You don't know, and it's very unusual. I won't say it never happens. It's very unusual that one entity or one entrepreneur or organisation can do everything.
Absolutely.
Certainly in my area around the electronics, the energy, the control system, software, cybersecurity, you need to bring everything together. So you need to really plug this collaborative environment together, working with other people. So you retain your intellectual property, your know-how, your USP, but bring other people in where they can add theirs, and actually the pie will grow. So everyone's still going to make, from a business perspective, make more profit.
Absolutely.
But you can start to do that. But then you've got to show it working. So when you go for that conversation with the people that are going to generate revenue, I think a lot of the time we forget we've got to generate revenue. And I don't think anyone should be frightened of revenue generation. If you generate revenue, you generate a surplus. If you generate a surplus, you can reinvest that as a business back into doing really cool and exciting stuff. Without that, we can't do great things. So never be frightened of that. But then from that, we've got to sell it. We have to be confident in the product, believe in the product, service, or what you are out there to do. And that conviction, your conviction in your idea, your game-changing service, your final thing is what's going to push it out to market. And not everyone you sell it to needs the same message.
No.
If you're going in to talk to, you've come up with a great idea that's going to be sold across both industrial organisations, but also has a real research application. When you go and talk to the research organisations, you need to be talking in the real detail, deep technical detail. Industrially, you need to have the technical detail to answer the questions, but you need to be picturing how it solves their problem. So it's two very different conversations. You must get the message right for the two. And certainly complex R&D and technology growth often gets stuck with a lot of technical detail because the people that develop it are outstandingly brilliant. And the rest of us, and I include myself in that, just struggle to keep up. We're not quite as on it in that particular area.
Yep. And so it comes back to the communication. You started with the communication, collaboration, conviction, and then it came back to the communication again of being then able to explain to various audiences who will have, yes, different levels of expertise, and at the level that they're looking for is certainly, I think, a challenge, and something that if you can crack, it really does make a difference to the overall outcomes of your project. So talking a little bit more about collaboration, I was noticing that PNDC brings together academia and SMEs. And so I wondered if you could talk about how partnership and multidisciplinary collaboration, because these are quite large areas you're talking about, and some of them back onto each other, certainly. How does partnership and multidisciplinary collaboration help to accelerate innovation?
So I think that what we're doing at PNDC is we're working across the energy sector, which Scotland has got great strength in. Transport, so decarbonisation of transport. How are we going to take the existing transport systems and look at that as a system, not just a vehicle or a plane, train or ship, but systems towards a net zero future, but also decarbonisation of heat. So heat is really important in industrial processes, but it's all a system. All of this is an energy system, and we bring that together as well. So actually linking the academia and the SMEs is really important, but the challenge is around how we get the adoption. A lot of SMEs have got the USP. A lot of them are in the startup, due to their size, in the startup phase of growth. So it's looking then at where we add the value. So it comes back to the collaboration piece. Do we have something either that is outside their focus, and as an SME you are highly focused on your product, service and offering? Do we have something that we can bring in, and how is the best way to partner? Is it actually PNDC working with academia based within the Faculty of Engineering and all out academia for adding something and then showcasing it? So PNDC is all about demonstration.
Right.
A lot of what we do is innovation and accelerating and de-risking technology. So at PNDC, we're not developing significant amounts of technology, but showcasing other people's, generating our IP through how do we do that best? How do we show on our realistic environment? So we have a network out in Cumbernauld that is a representation of an 11,000 volt distribution network.
Wow.
So we can bring people's SMEs new technology to it, show how it behaves on it. If something goes wrong, Glasgow still has power. We're testing it in a safe environment, robust environment, but real. So for us at PNDC, it's enabling then larger players where this would be used and deployed to come and see that technology. So it's de-risked it from the SME's perspective. I've seen it working. I can show it. So it comes back to what I talked about on demonstrating this technology. And from a end user, somebody whose network it goes on, they can see it's not going to cause any problems. From plug this in at home and it will help do something. Well, you'd like to see it working.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same, just on a somewhat larger scale with implications if it went wrong on a more grandiose area. But I also think it's about what we do, and you use the word multidisciplinary in there. I think that's really important, that multidisciplinary can mean multiple things to multiple people. And, from as an engineer, multidisciplinary, well, there's electrical, there's mechanical, there's civil, and I'm sure there's many jokes where they all walk into a bar together.
I'm sure.
But I also think it's about different sectors coming together. And that's one of the things that I think is really important. And innovation is often thought of, I've got a bright new idea, blue sky, this is new. But I also think the multidisciplinary piece is there something that's being done in the energy network, for example, that would be applicable to marine?
Right.
And I think as PNDC, it is our job and our role to enable those cross-sectoral innovation through translation, which for an SME, I'm doing this. I know there's a real need in the energy sector, so I'm focused on that. But I could just double my market. The addressable market has suddenly doubled because somebody who knows about another sector has gone, we spoke to these organisations in this area. And I think as a university, and certainly as an entrepreneurial university like Strathclyde, that's part of our role, is making these connections so that they can talk to each other, and potentially being the translator in the middle so that they can talk the same language, because what energy talk about and what marine talk about is the same thing with very different language.
Absolutely. It comes back to communication again. So talking about advancing net zero energy transport and heat solutions, which I know is something that you're passionate about, what do you see as the main challenges?
So I think it's a multifaceted area, and some of it is it really links back to my triple helix background. I think policy is really important, and consistency of policy. So we're not going to wander into a political conversation, but actually having that consistency. This is the direction of travel. This is the timescales. These are the horizons, and this is the aligned other areas. So electric vehicles, we need this many electric vehicles. Well, aligned to that is how many electric vehicle charging stations there needs to be. Once we understand the vehicles, we understand the charging stations. Once we understand the charging stations, we understand the impact on the network. So how do we bring those three together? So I think that's really important, that we have this clarity and consistency of policy.
Great.
I think ensuring that we've got supply chains. Now, more than ever, that is very high up in the news, and it ranges from entire final product all the way through. I was recently at an event looking at recycling of magnets that come off end-of-life wind turbines, end-of-life electric vehicles. How do we bring those back into growing supply chains? And I know that the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland and NIS are now and have just started a new activity around recycling around wind turbines and that type of thing. So the supply chain isn't just what we'd call the virgin supply chain, or from ore to a material, be it metal or something else, but also and the supply chain of ideas, skills. How do we get great people? And obviously, as a university, that's one of the things we are doing our best to excel at, delivering great people, and as a place of useful learning, people that have got relevant skills for the different sectors.
Yeah.
But we must do it with pace. 2050 for the UK, 2045 here in Scotland is just round the corner.
Not far away.
There are not many quarters left. If we broke it down quarterly, we're less than 25 years away. We're less than 100 quarters. Every 3 months that go by, we've slashed, from a UK perspective, over 10%. Sorry, every quarter we've lost another percent of our route to 2050.
Mm-hmm.
So each year, another 4 or 5% gone. It's around the corner.
Yeah.
We must therefore work together at pace to deliver this.
And so what sectors or technologies do you think hold the most promise for net zero innovation over the next 5-10 years? And how well placed are we in Scotland to make the progress we need? Because you talked about how we are, quite a leader in this kind of area in Scotland.
Absolutely. And I think energy is, Everything is going to be underpinned by an energy system. And I'm being clearly ambiguous with that, if that's possible.
Yep.
I am. So energy is not just electrical, but there's multiple vectors of energy, and there are multiple people more intelligent than I who will wander into which is right for where. It will be a multi-vector solution, I think, is the one thing we can all agree on. But here in Scotland, we've got great strength in that the new government, if I can still call them new, have situated GB Energy up in Aberdeen. So sort of a clear signal from government that Scotland has a strength in energy. But to grow, we work together. Within the energy sector, we want to take more renewable energy. So whether we look at a wind turbine, well, inside there is a generator that's going to use magnets, but it's high performance electric machine design, electric machine manufacture. Some of them have got a gearbox. There's then connected to that a load of switch gear, so transformers that here in the UK we used to be world-class manufacturing. That dropped off. What the opportunities there to grow that again. From there, it gets converted from what is generated from a wind turbine. So we've got some electronics that do electrical energy conversion. So semiconductors, we're doing some world-class things in power semiconductors in the country, and specifically here in Scotland. We've got activity going on across the Central Belt, as well as up into, I've already said, Aberdeen through Dundee, etc. On those types of activities. And within the semiconductors, there's not just the manufacture of a chip, but it's how does it package? And here at Strathclyde, we're doing more of that in our new Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre, but bringing more of that together as we build the electronics that go with the electric machines. And that's the same if it's solar. You've got your solar cells, but then you've got to convert it into the electricity we want to use either in our homes, industry, and that we can transmit. So there is a real opportunity now to stand up and be counted in that. And maybe you'll say I'm a power electronics and machines person, but I believe that has got a great opportunity. And any battery storage that's used can't connect to the grid.
Right.
You need electronics. So let us concentrate on the area. How do we make that electronics more efficient? How do we make it smaller? And how do we make it affordable? But I think ultimately with the net zero energy systems, we've got to be looking for an affordable, a reliable, and a robust energy system. If we can get the reliability, the robustness at an affordable point, delivering a reduced on zero carbon solution, that's what we've got to be aiming for. Because once we've got that energy in that form, how we use it, if we want to make hydrogen, we can do that. If we want to use it to create ammonia, we can use it. But we need to make the energy in the first place. And here in Scotland, not only do we have the wind, which we all know and love, but we have the people, the knowledge and the experience from fundamental research of converter design through to how we actually manufacture that and deploy it into industry.
So it sounds that we are very well placed. And obviously with Strathclyde being located here, we consider ourselves Scotland's leading entrepreneurial university, and we've got a very strong track record in research, commercialisation and industry collaboration. From your perspective, how can universities play an even bigger role in growing our capacity for innovation?
So I think you're absolutely right. And one of the exciting things when I came here to work at PNDC and take on the Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre was around that entrepreneurial view, how we grow the collaboration. There are a number of routes then to allow us to be better. And when I say us, I mean the higher education and further education sectors. So I think key areas that we can really add value is innovation of people. How do we get more people? Skills, you go and talk to people across industry, skills is fundamental. It's one of the big things. Where are we going to get the right people to deliver this? So obviously as a university, that is a really strong area. We need to continue to work with government agencies such as Innovate UK, which is part of UK Research and Innovation. So how do they allow collaborations to be built between industry academia as well as research technology organisations such as Catapults, and allow there within a collaborative framework, catalysed by public funding, to grow and go. But we also need to look as universities at the pace of industry. I've just said how imminent 2045 or 2050 is going to be, and how it's upon us. So we've got to work at the pace of industry. And there are going to be some ideas which are immediate. How do we accelerate those out into the market and work hand in glove, highlighting this is the problem, here is a solution, here's me showing it fixes that problem,
Right.
How do we work together to commercialise that? There are some solutions which are going to be what I call midterm, 2030, 2035, that this is currently at a concept level, but we need a plan.
Right.
We need the plan through. We need to explain how we're going to, and at what points. And things like Strathclyde Inspire, where we can support people understanding that roadmap. Where should you be going for funding and from where?
Right.
Whether that is private investor funding, venture capital funding, private equity, or is it something else? We can support them on that journey. And as we then go from there, it's going to be all about the long-term things, working with, understanding if different scenarios. And I think that coming from an engineering background, very, very good at scenario planning, but dislike uncertainty.
Right.
Comes back to the uncertainty piece we spoke about earlier. But if we can start to consider different scenarios and go, if this happens, then this is the sort of technology. If this, these are, and then if this could be, and also take some very extreme scenarios. What if something happened that we would never
Foresee.
imagine? Yeah. What if it stopped raining? It's exceptionally unlikely. Or what if everyone had glasses that gave them all the information in front of them? If we were a computer manufacturer, we'd be very looking at that and making sure that we adapt to that. But that's sort of the long-term blue sky. And then as a university, we should be supporting those blue sky visions of the future while doing the first few bits as well. So I think that bringing all that together, but acknowledging that from an industrial perspective, I have to deal with operational issues. And that's where PNDC have said we're looking at what we can do here and now and solve live problems that industry have and work with them. I think it's not, don't worry, we know all we have. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we work with them to solve those. But then how we bring them on the journey to what they see as well as their roadmaps, working on those roadmaps in the mid and long term.
So it sounds like a multi-layered approach.
Absolutely.
There's a lot required at the same time, and having that blue sky, that opportunity, I guess, that universities can bring for having that blue sky thinking can also be very important in making sure that we've got all of the bases covered, if you like. We're moving forward, but we also have thoughts about things that we may not foresee.
Absolutely. And I think that as universities, we also need to make sure that we bring in the right colleagues. You know, great idea, and we use PNDC as and somebody's come with a challenge that, yeah, we know, we understand that. Actually, there's new stuff coming out that could help this. Let's bring in some of the people who are working on fundamental research within our strong academic community. When we've got this work, how are you going to make it? Oh, well, let's have a chat with somebody from NMIS who can then bring in the manufacturing lens, not to manufacture it here, but then to, again, bring the right ecosystem together. And as a university, we play in a number of ecosystems that actually being able to bring together will add significant value.
Talking about establishing and bringing together different aspects, if you like, how do you see PNDC supporting both established industry partners and then the more early stage innovators alike?
So I think that this comes back to what I spoke about earlier with you, that we've got this demonstration platform. PNDC are about solving operational issues, demonstrating technology, accelerating that technology. So key performance indicators for us is how many technologies are we enabled to be accelerated through the well-known valley of death.
Yes.
So once we've demonstrated those, we then enable them to be rapidly commercialized and adopted. So for us, it's working with the SMEs that can showcase their thing. Our ecosystem, our network, our partners have got some of those larger players, and the majority of DNO type players within energy or automotive, heavy goods vehicles, shipping. How do we enable them to see technologies they wouldn't otherwise?
Right.
Because we've got different ecosystems to each other and enabling them to come together. So really it's about convening power, I think, is the key there, that we have significant convening power. We can convene the right people in the right room at the right level.
Right.
That can have those conversations. And I think that getting the right people at the right level to converse is really important.
That's brilliant. We have a number of people who listen who might be at an early stage in their journey. So Inspire exists to support students, we exist to support staff, we exist to support alumni. So we have a broad range of people who we support. For anyone who's at the earlier stage of their journey, whether that's a student or an early career researcher, who might have a great idea, but not necessarily that business experience. You talked about coming out of university kind of straight into the fire of, well, I'm the first employee. How am I going to help this new thing become established? What would you say to someone who has a great idea, but not necessarily that experience of business?
Put your hand up and ask for help.
Right.
Don't be frightened to go, I need a hand. Don't be frightened to come to people like yourselves here and go, this is my idea. What do I do next? Get in touch with people, build your networks, look at opportunities where, and there are a lot of free opportunities to go and do networking, get out and network, but have your clear, this is what I'm doing. Make sure you know, and as it was put to me, you get 30 seconds in the elevator with Warren Buffett. What are you telling him? What is your pitch in that 30 seconds to tell him what you do? Because you've only got 6 floors.
Right.
How are you going to do it?
Do you still work on that now? Even
Yes.
At your stage, you still think you have your 30 seconds, you know where you're headed?
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely critical. You know, what do you do? What differentiates you and how it helps? Generally, because in your 30 seconds and you've just walked into the lift, you've not got a very specific for each potential customer or potential partner, but you have your, this is what I do. Yes, absolutely. And we continue to evolve it.
Right.
It's not fixed.
No.
And, that is a challenge because you've got to then, as one person, as you're starting out, it's great. You can change it. You know what you've changed it to. As you've got 5 people, well, you probably toss it around a bit in a meeting and come up with, and everyone's happy. Once you've got 50 people, you've then got to make sure you keep people on the same page. And once you've told someone, it's out.
Right.
So then they're going to tell someone, and remember that you need to make it in a way that they remember it. And when they're talking to somebody, they're going to think, I spoke to somebody who told me about, let me connect you. And then suddenly you've gone from being one person, if you speak to 50 people at an event, well, suddenly you've got 50 people who know what you're doing, who are going to talk to 50 people themselves. And if one of them says, I'm really struggling with, and they go, I just spoke to somebody who said they did that, let me put you in touch.
Absolutely.
And I would say the big thing is networks. Massive. And I know when I left university, it's something I really focused on, building networks of people that I know I can pick up the phone to and keep in touch with those. And now, at my stage in my career, some of them are starting out on their own or are moving into a different area or in the, do you know somebody at, or can you? And now I understand why when you started out, Will, you spent all your time building these networks to be known.
Right.
It's not about you, me. It's about being known so that you can flex your networks and you can help your network just as much as they can help you.
Yep. moving back into collaboration and communication again, it was interesting hearing you talk about that difference of when it's just you and you have your vision, you can change it. That's not going to be a problem. And then you might have 5 people, it's still relatively easy. Scales up to 50, gets harder. So moving to talk about your kind of leadership experience, because your career has blended the kind of technical aspects, the commercial aspects, and the strategic aspects of leadership. Are there any defining moments or projects that really shaped your approach to leadership and innovation?
I think the challenge around leadership is I've always tried to be very authentic. I've tried to always be a person. You know, I think that is, for me, what number one, I'm a husband, a dad, and I'm me.
Right.
I've never been able to go, that's home. Right, I'm in work, that we never talk about, you know. When I took on the role of PNDC, did my first meeting with all hands meeting. One slide, picture of me, my wife, my kids. This is me.
Right.
This is what I do. I run a scout group. I do this. I used to referee international hockey. All this type of thing. That's me. That's who's here. It's not. So I've always tried to be very approachable, very open, and very transparent with how I lead.
Right.
It has its drawbacks, but it also is, I find, well received. And a lot of that came, and I first saw probably when I worked with an American leader who came to the UK and was leading our organisation, and the way that absolute determination, this is where we're going, clear communication, this is where we're going and this is what's needed, but actually I'm a person.
Right.
And the rapport, the building up, the engagement, understanding people became really, really important, was really important to him. And when you saw him in action, I think that was probably where I started to shape most of my leadership style around, when you saw the rapport and the engagement and the response, the way people responded to him versus other approaches that were not as well received. And I think that as you go through a career, whether you're starting out on your own or you go into organisations, it's important to look at how different leaders at different parts of organisations work and operate. And some of them, I really like that. I'm going to take from that this element. You're going to see things that you go, I understand where you're going. I understand why you want to go, how I would have done it.
Right.
Remember that and learn from that. You're going to see other bits where you go, if anyone ever sees me try and lead in that way, please tell me. And that's fine. You know, everyone is different and unique. And I think ultimately, you say, where did you start to see this? It probably comes all the way back to my dad.
Right.
Who was an engineer. He was a very senior leader in an electronics manufacturing organisation in drives. And the way, and his style and approach, and you've got to have your own ethics. You have to have your own morals, and you must always stick to them. And that was always very clear from what he did and how he was. And also, and I said to you before we started this, that you go and do things. You do things because you enjoy them.
Right.
It's how you stand on stage and you hate standing on stage as public speaking. Well, come back to the only thing you can control is the preparation you do to stand on stage, and if you enjoy it. So make sure you can prepare. Make sure you enjoy it. Find somebody in the audience who's smiling as you talk to the always challenging engineering audience and tell them a joke. And if somebody smiles, you've just doubled your success rate. So I really think that authenticity is really critical to being a leader. And for me, going through my career, it's continuing to develop that and ensuring that I'm doing things in a morally and ethically right way that's true to me.
Right. Yeah. So having, your standards and your values and looking forward to the things that you're going to do with enjoyment, I think I'm taking from that. So what is next for you and PNDC? So what impact would you hope to make in the years ahead?
So PNDC is on a growth trajectory at the moment. I mentioned the Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre. This is a new centre for the University of Strathclyde, which is within the Faculty of Engineering. PNDC is the first partner to have got in there an operational equipment. So ANZIC, a good acronym for that. So ANZIC is all about bringing together the fundamental technology through the test and validation into manufacture. And then we've got skills work both here and NMIS, and trying to bring all that together. So within that's 10,000 square meters. So it's not a small facility. So we're growing into that to do more in transport, to do more in heat, and all the decarbonisation thereof, but still at megawatt scale. I think we talked about how do you be an entrepreneur, and we're not focusing on our background and our base at PNDC is energy networks, working at significant power levels, megawatt sort of power levels. So when we're looking at the transport and the heat sector, we're looking at comparable power levels. We're not trying to do small. There are a lot of people who are doing great work on passenger car or electrification of motorcycles, small. That's not where PNDC's strength is. So we are continuing to grow, but in the area we have a differentiated capability. So we continue to look at that. We continue to support DNOs and our bedrockies, power networks, continuing to grow that and support operationally. We introduce them to new technologies, look at the deployment and acceleration. Growth at the moment, so in the next 5 years, we expect to see significant growth in AI. Where we're different is around the application, not the underlying bit, but how do we deploy it? How do we support businesses understanding how they use it, deploy it, and it's safe? We've got a test bed. So let's deploy it, test it, and see.
Right.
So I think that we'll start to see growth there. Future control rooms, as we start to get a more distributive network, we're going to see a big growth in our future control rooms, and that could link to AI. And assets, so all of the substations you see around, how do we continue to grow those, as well as building that transport and heat portfolio of work on powertrain testing, battery, fuel cell. But again, it's around that demonstration piece. For me personally, I think it's continuing that exciting journey with PNDC, is continuing to put and deliver on our existing strategy, continue to evolve that strategy, because the strategy is an ever-living document. It is going to be about how we then start to evolve the people.
Right.
How do we create opportunities for people? How do we structure ourselves in the right way? And all of it is about how we best support our partners. So whatever we're doing, we have a vision, we have a strategy, but we must make sure and keep going back to our partners that we're aligned with that. Within the Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre, continue to grow that and grow the synergies between PNDC, NMIS, academia, industry, government and policy. So can we start to build more of that together and grow great opportunities for people to come together, to collaborate and to say, this is what I do and here I am showcasing it.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like you have a lot to be getting on with.
It's going to be a busy 5 years.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'll let you get on with it. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really fascinating having this conversation. I appreciate your time. And that's it for this episode of Inspiring Entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button on whichever platform you're listening to us. We'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review or a rating, as this helps other viewers to find us.